I'm Corey Evan. Coming up in today's report. Police have released details on the suspected gunman in the Copenhagen attacks. A West Virginia train derailment has sent oil tankers into the river. We look at upgrades to computers and earbuds for the Common Core tests in our continuing battle against global socialism. The business world has lost the creator of one of our favorite nut butter spreads. Lance Armstrong is set to lose a lot of money in lawsuits across America. And as a game show geek, I give 3 cheers for the triumphant return of Celebrity Jeopardy in entertainment. You'll understand that when we get to entertainment news. All that and more coming up right now in the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Corey Evan.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the Evan Miller Report tonight. I'm Corey Evan. Jason Miller is off tonight. But nonetheless, I've got some good stories lined up for you, starting with one that I brought you over the weekend from voanews.com. Danish police shot and killed a man early Sunday, suspected in the slayings of 2 people in Copenhagen since Saturday in what the country's prime minister calls a cynical act of terror against Denmark. Authorities said the Denmark-born 22-year-old alleged gunman was fatally shot after he opened fire on officers near a train station. His previous criminal record included violence and weapons offenses, according to police. Officials said no evidence suggests other gunmen were involved in the shootings, one at a free speech event and the other outside a Copenhagen synagogue. Police investigator Jørgen Skov said Sunday, quote, "We are still faced with a huge investigation. We need to make sure that our theory is in fact correct. A number of things indicate that we did get the right man, but we still have to investigate whether he acted alone. But at the moment there is nothing to suggest that any other perpetrators were involved," Skov said. In the first attack, a gunman with an automatic weapon killed 1 person and wounded 3 police officers at a cafe. Danish media identified the deceased as film director Finn Norgard, age 55. The free speech event was also attended by Swedish cartoonist Lars Vilks, who is known for provocative drawings including a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad that led to threats against the 68-year-old. The French ambassador to Denmark, Francois Zimmeray, also attended the discussion. Both were unharmed in the shooting. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon condemned the deadly attacks. The U.S. condemned the attack at the cafe, calling it deplorable. Hours later, volunteer Dan Uzan was guarding a bat mitzvah ceremony when he was killed and 2 police officers wounded in the synagogue shooting. Standing in front of the temple, Denmark's Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt offered condolences on Sunday. In light of the violence, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged Jewish people in Europe to immigrate to Israel, as he did following a deadly attack on a kosher supermarket in Paris last month. In commenting on the shootings, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said in a statement released Sunday, quote, "I strongly condemn the shootings in Copenhagen. These are unacceptable attacks on our open, free, and democratic societies and on the Jewish community in Denmark. We stand together with our ally Denmark against terror," the statement read. Stay with us here at the Evan Miller Report. If any updates on this story become available, we'll bring them to you. Next up, from Radio Free Europe, the EU has blacklisted an additional 19 individuals and 9 entities for undermining or threatening the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Ukraine. According to the February 16th announcement, among the 19 people who will now be under a visa ban and have their assets in the EU frozen are Russian First Deputy Defense Minister Arkady Bakin and Deputy Defense Minister Anatoly Antonov, as well as the Deputy Chief of the Russian General Staff of the Armed Forces, Andrei Kartopolov. 2 Russian State Duma members, famed singer Iosif Kobzon and Valery Rashkin, were added because of their support of the separatists in eastern Ukraine. Kobzon was appointed honorary consul of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic in Russia, and Rashkin is the founder of the civic movement Krasnaya Moskva Patriotic Front Aid, which has organized demonstrations supporting the separatists. 15 separatists from the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics are also blacklisted. Alexander Shubin, Yevgeny Manuelov, and Olga Besedina, who hold the unrecognized posts of Ministers of Justice, Budget, and Economic Development, respectively, were all included. Also added were the self-proclaimed DNR Justice Minister Yekaterina Filipova, Budget Minister Alexander Timofeyev, and Communications Minister Viktor Yatsenko. The public movement Novorossiya is among the entities listed, together with 8 separatist fighting units, including the Cossack National Guard, the Sparta Battalion, and the Somali Battalion. They will have their assets frozen by the EU. The commander of the 1st Cossack Regiment, Pavel Dremov, and the commanders of the Sparta and Somali battalions, Arseny Pavlov and Mikhail Tolstik, are also blacklisted. Brussels decided to add to its sanction list after the January 24th shelling of southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, which killed at least 29 people. The final decision on which names to include was made by EU foreign ministers on February 9th, but the publication in the EU's official journal was delayed in order to give last week's negotiations in Minsk between the leaders of France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine a chance of succeeding. And I'm separating this next one out from business news because this one is bigger than business. This is just outright crime. Up to 100 banks and financial institutions worldwide have been attacked in an unprecedented cyber robbery, claims a new report according to the BBC. Computer security firm Kaspersky Lab estimates $1 billion have been stolen in the attacks, which it says started in 2013 and are still ongoing. A cyber criminal gang with members from Russia, Ukraine, and China is responsible, it said. Kaspersky said it worked with Interpol and Europol on the investigation. It said the attacks had taken place in 30 countries, including financial firms in Russia, the US, Germany, China, Ukraine, and Canada. Quote, "These attacks again will underline the fact that criminals will exploit any vulnerability in any system," said Sanjay Vermani, director of Interpol's Digital Crime Center. Kaspersky said the gang's methods marked a new stage in cyber robbery where, quote, "malicious users steal money directly from banks and avoid targeting end users," unquote. The gang, which Kaspersky dubbed Carbonac, used computer viruses to infect company networks with malware, including video surveillance, enabling it to see and record everything that happened on staff's screens. In some cases, it was then able to transfer money from the bank's accounts to their own, or even able to tell cash machines to dispense cash at a predetermined time of day. Kaspersky said on average each bank robbery took between 2 and 4 months, with up to $10 million stolen each time. The Financial Services Info Sharing and Analysis Center, a body that alerts banks about hacking activity, said that its members had received a briefing about Kaspersky's report in January. So ladies and gentlemen, be wary. Anything that you do digitally with your bank, now you have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Coming home to the U.S., ABC News tells me a train carrying more than 100 tankers of crude oil derailed in southern West Virginia on Monday, sending at least one into the Kanawha River, igniting at least 14 tankers and sparking a house fire, officials said. There were no immediate reports of injuries. Nearby residents were told to evacuate as a state emergency response, and environmental officials headed to the scene about 30 miles southeast of Charleston. The state was under a winter storm warning and getting heavy snowfall at times, with as much as 5 inches in some places. It's not clear if the weather had anything to do with the derailment, which occurred at 1:20 Eastern Standard Time along a flat stretch of rail. Public safety spokesman Lawrence Messina said responders at the scene reported one tanker and possibly another went into the river. Messina said local emergency responders were having trouble getting to the house that caught fire. James Bennett, 911 coordinator for Fayette County, said he knew of no injuries related to the house fire or subsequent tanker fires. He said a couple hundred families were evacuated as a precaution. The rail company acknowledged the derailment on its Twitter page. The office of Governor Earl Ray Tomblin said the tanker cars were loaded with Bakken crude from North Dakota and headed to Yorktown, Virginia. Local emergency officials said all but 2 of the 109 cars being hauled were tanker cars. West Virginia American Water spokeswoman Laura Jordan said the company shut down a water treatment plant located about 3 miles from the derailment about 2:30 p.m. The plant serves about 2,000 customers. State health officials said another water plant downstream in the town of Cedar Grove also closed its intake. They asked customers from both water systems to conserve water. And as we get further developments on this story, I will bring them to you. Let's just hope that they can get their water treatment plants back up and running soon, because that would not be good if they couldn't. The feds should make critical engineering and safety upgrades at rail crossings after the deadly Metro-North collision. That's what Senator Chuck Schumer said Sunday, according to New York Daily News. Schumer and Senator Richard Blumenthal announced legislation to require the Federal Railroad Administration to install new lights and signals at accident-prone crossings. This measure would also provide grant funding, they say, to strengthen education and public awareness about the dangers at those spots. In New York, there were 341 crossing crashes that caused 59 deaths and 96 injuries between 2005 and 2014, according to Schumer. Although it's not clear to us here at the Evan Miller Report whether any of those efforts will bring forth any actual safety improvements. So Mr. Schumer, Mr. Blumenthal, you better have all your ducks in a row if you're going to propose something like that. And Jay, I know you usually like to wait until after business to do the DC news, but I'm just itching to get this done today. Americans are increasingly unhappy with President Obama's handling of ISIS, and a growing share of the nation believes that fight is going badly, according to a new CNN ORC survey released today. The poll found 57% of Americans disapprove of how Obama is handling the threat posed by ISIS, a significant decline in support for the president over the past few months. In late September, that number was 49%. 57% disapprove of his handling of foreign affairs more broadly, and 54% disapprove of how the president is handling terrorism, including us here at the Evan Miller Report. But at any rate, another 60% rate Obama negatively on his handling of electronic national security. The declining approval ratings for Obama on national security come as a weekend of international turmoil further underscores the growing threats abroad. And with Congress taking this week off from D.C., the opportunity to resolve the ongoing stalemate over immigration policy and Homeland Security funding is drawing short. Congress will get back to work next week, and the funding runs out on February 27th. A memo provided to TucsonWeekly.com notes that McCain said Sunday on Meet the Press that Homeland Security's job was too important to be held as a political hostage. The House in January passed a bill that would fund the department and overturn Obama's actions deferring the deportation of millions of undocumented immigrants. If the Senate doesn't pass the House by February 27th, the Department of Homeland Security will shut down, and the Senate may not act in time to keep the department open. On NBC's Meet the Press, host Chuck Todd asked McCain if the House Republicans' approach was appropriate. Quote, "I think it would be terrible. The American people didn't give us a majority to have a fight between House and Senate Republicans. They want things done. We cannot cut funding from the Department of Homeland Security," McCain said, "and there's ways we can address what the president did was unconstitutional. But it's not through shutting down the Department of Homeland Security. It's too serious," unquote. Meanwhile, Congress appears stuck on the issue because the House is insisting that the fund bill also overturn President Obama's executive actions on immigration that have provided legal status and work permits to millions of immigrants. Senate Republicans don't have the 60 votes necessary to overcome a Democratic filibuster of the House bill, but have been unable to convince their House counterparts to bend. The White House believes it holds the upper hand in the battle and will seek to press its bully pulpit advantage during a recess week for Congress. I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not expecting much to be done here. And I don't think you expect much either, ladies and gentlemen. And on that note, I think it's time to go to break. When we return, if you're expecting a drone delivery from Amazon, well, you might want to call them up and ask them to deliver it another way. I talk about common crap and gay marriage rulings in our continuing battle against global socialism. Lance Armstrong stands to lose his bike shorts in our lawsuits across America. And who's engaged to Lady Gaga? That's all coming up after the break on the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
It's time for the business report on the Evan Miller Report. I'm Corey Evan. The Dow's up 46 points at 18,019. The Nasdaq gained 36 points at 4893, and the S&P 508 is 2096. However, European stocks edged lower today as investors were skeptical that Greece and its European creditors would find a quick deal to solve the country's debt problems. Asian stocks, however, closed higher after Japan emerged from recession. Germany's DAX fell 0.4% to close at 10,923. And France's CAC 40 dropped 0.2% to 47.51. Eurozone finance ministers met today to consider Greece's proposal for short-term bridge financing without the onerous terms previously imposed on the country until a longer-term solution to Greece's crushing debt is found. Investors hope an agreement will be reached to avoid Greece's exit from the euro. Germany's finance minister today said a quick deal on Monday is unlikely. That pushed Athens stock index down almost 4%. Asia, however, was buoyed by news Japan emerged from recession last quarter, even though growth fell short of many forecasters' expectations. Don't be surprised, ladies and gentlemen. Data on Monday showed the world's third-largest economy grew at a 2.2% annualized rate in the 3 months ended in October, boosted by exports and public spending. Growth for 2014 was flat, and real wages fell 0.1%. Private investment was anemic, suggesting that businesses and households still are cautious. Japan's economy slipped into recession last year after the government increased sales tax in April. Which we here at the Evan Miller Report would note that when you increase taxes, you tend to discourage spending, government officials, so if you want to encourage folks to increase their spending, lower their taxes a little bit. Take a little bit of risk. That's where it'll pay off. And here's to Michele Ferrero, the world's richest candy maker whose Nutella, chocolate, and hazelnut spread helped raise generations of Europeans and defined Italian sweets. Ferrero died on Valentine's Day, the company said. He was 89. Ferrero, who had been ill for several months, died Saturday in Monte Carlo, where he lived, surrounded by his family, the company said in a statement. Ferrero was the patriarch of the eponymous family empire known best for its Nutella and Rocher chocolates. Delicious. The company's products also included Tic Tacs and the Kinder line of products, including the eggs beloved by children for the treat inside. Forbes noted in ranking Ferrero and his family 30th on the list of the world's richest billionaires in 2014, worth $23.4 billion. The company was one of Italy's most successful, a prime example of the made-in-Italy brand of food and luxury goods that have defined the private sector in post-war Italy. Italian President Sergio Mattarella praised Ferrero as one of the leaders of Italian industry, quote, always ahead of his time thanks to innovative products and his tenacious work and reserved character, unquote. Rest in peace, Mr. Ferrero, and note, I've got a couple of jars of Nutella, which I am definitely going to be enjoying tonight. And don't hold your breath waiting for a drone to drop off that order from Amazon or that large pepperoni pie dinner from your favorite pizza joint. According to Bloomberg, the U.S. government's first attempt at widespread approval for the use of small unmanned aircraft could change how some everyday businesses get things done, bridge inspections being one. It may produce at least $100 million in economic benefits, according to analysis by President Obama's administration. They may limit other uses companies were awaiting, such as long-range pipeline inspections and news media photography of public events, according to Patrick Eakin, an editor at the informational website suasnews.com, who participated in the industry committee that advised the FAA on the rule proposal. The FAA identified at least 4 areas where it said small unmanned aircraft can be beneficial: photography, agriculture, law enforcement, and search and rescue, and inspecting structures such as bridges and telecommunications towers. Even companies willing to live by the rules won't be able to operate right away. The FAA must review what probably will be an onslaught of public comments seeking changes to the proposal, and the regulations may not be completed until 2017, earliest. So even though there's probably a very slim chance of stopping drones from coming altogether, at least for the time being, it'll give us a chance to sort of adjust to them and not be totally weirded out by a weird little craft showing up with a package. Right, that's your business report for today. Now it's time to go into the latest in our continuing battle against global socialism. This one from the Washington Times. 6th grader Kayla Hunter considers herself pretty tech-savvy. She has a home computer, unlike about half her classmates at her elementary school, and it matches up well with the one she'll use this week to take the new test linked to the Common Core. Still, the perky 11-year-old worries. During a recent practice exam at her school in Ohio, she couldn't even log on. Her state on Tuesday will be the first to administer one of 2 tests in English language arts and math based on the Common CRAP standards developed by 2 separate groups of states, and other cartels as noted by our friend Orleen Kurla. By the end of the school year, about 12 million children in 29 states and DC will be taking them using computers or iPads, or the like. The exams are expected to be more difficult than the traditional spring standardized state exams they replace. In some states, they'll require hours of additional testing time because students will have to do more than just fill in the bubbles this time. They say the goal is to test students on critical thinking, requiring them to describe their reasoning and solve problems. The tests have multimedia components, written essays, and multi-step calculations needed to solve math problems that go beyond just using rote memory. Students in some states will take adaptive versions in which questions get harder or easier depending on their answers. But of course that just fuels controversy. They say the Common Core tests fulfill the requirement in the federal No Child Left Behind law for annual testing in reading and math in grades 3 through 8, and again in high school. But as Congress seeks to rewrite the education law, there's debate over whether the tests should be required by Washington, and whether the students are being tested too much. Parents in pockets of the country have joined a movement of opting out of these standardized tests. Just 8 days before the test, the Morgan Local School District in rural southeastern Ohio ordered 200 more Chromebooks, which worked best during the practice run. The week before the test, Kayla and her classmates huddled in pairs sharing what devices were available at the school. In some places, school admin and state leaders are only grudgingly moving forward. Referencing federal law, Illinois State Board of Education officials threatened to withhold funds from any district that didn't administer the PM CST exam. Chicago Public Schools officials cited technology concerns in announcing they won't give the exam in a majority of its schools. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of schools aren't even ready to give the Common Core test, and here's Washington telling them to do this. So if our little friend Kayla can't even log in for a practice exam, just imagine the disaster that's going to be rolling out during the rollout of this Common Crap test. You have been warned. And from Boise, according to KTVB, an Idaho lawmaker upset with federal judges who have overturned same-sex marriage bans across the nation is proposing that Congress impeach judges who failed to uphold the U.S. Constitution. Ho, my kind of man right here. Republican Representative Paul Shepard of Riggins introduced the non-binding resolution Monday to the Idaho House State Affairs Committee. The committee voted to introduce the resolution with 4 Democrats opposed. Of course they are. Shepard says that federal judges are adjudicating against the intent of U.S. Constitution, focusing primarily on the multiple rulings that gay marriage bans are illegal. Idaho's gay marriage ban, passed in 2006, was overturned last October 15th. Shepard's resolution originally said judges should be impeached if they make changes to the law. However, several committee members countered that the language was too broad and amended it. Even though I don't expect too much to happen here, I still salute Mr. Shepard for at least making strides. So, will little Kayla be able to survive the Common Crap exam? Will Mr. Shepard be able to bite the bullet against gay marriage? And where is that pizza delivery drone that Oh yeah, that's right. Darn it. Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism. And now it's time for lawsuits across America. I'm looking forward to these 3 suits. Right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits across America for this Monday are now in session. First item on the docket comes to us from MSNBC. Could the latest high-stakes challenge to Obamacare be stumbling just short of the goal line? For the last 2 years, 4 challengers have waged a pitched battle with the Obama administration over whether Obamacare authorizes subsidies that make insurance affordable for millions of people. The stakes are huge. Without the subsidies, more than 8 million Americans would lose their insurance, they say. The case, King v. Burwell, has reached the doors of the Supreme Court. Yet now, just weeks before the much-anticipated oral argument, questions suddenly have surfaced about whether the challengers can be in court at all. To sue in federal court, a plaintiff must show that he has so-called standing that he suffered an injury, and that if he wins in court, the injury will be redressed. If either piece is missing, the court has no power to hear that case. Virginia residents David King, Rose Luck, Brenda Levy, and Douglas Hurst are the plaintiffs in our case. Obamacare opponents handpicked these 4 average Joe plaintiffs to serve as figureheads in the King lawsuit. They argued in the lower courts that the 4 have standing to sue because, counterintuitively, subsidies that make insurance cheaper actually hurt them. In the lower courts, the government poked holes in that argument for 2 of the plaintiffs. It ran the numbers and showed that Rose Luck and David King would not be able to afford insurance, and they wouldn't have to buy it, even with the subsidies. Thus, Luck and King weren't injured. They lacked standing. At least that's what they say. The plaintiffs didn't fight back. Instead, they relied on the standing of the other 2 plaintiffs, Brenda Levy and Douglas Hurst. That was enough because only one plaintiff needs standing for the lawsuit to continue. Next up from the St. Louis Dispatch, as video cameras begin to sweep post-Ferguson policing, and policymakers grapple with whether to bar the public from watching the images, one such recording sits at the heart of a new lawsuit. It shows St. Louis police making an arrest that would later be called abusive, and catches an apparently surprised officer yelling in part, quote, "Everybody hold up, we're red right now," because she abruptly shuts off the camera. Joel Schwartz and Bevis Schock, lawyers who filed suit on behalf of Cortez Bufford, said red is cop slang for a running camera. What is seen before the video stops, they claim, supports their accusations in St. Louis Circuit Court that police lacked probable cause and applied excessive force. The video, which St. Louis Mayor Francis Slay's office has asked a private lawyer to delay releasing last summer, shows city officers pulling Bufford from a car, kicking him repeatedly, and shocking him with a taser. It played a role in the dropping of charges against Bufford. But a lawyer for the St. Louis Police Officers Association insists that the video really reflects a proper escalation of force applied against a resisting suspect who was lucky he didn't get shot when he reached for a gun. Police Chief Sam Dotson declined to comment on the specifics of the case. And finally from the New York Post, a 3-man arbitration panel has ordered Lance Armstrong and Tailwind Sports to pay $10 million in a fraud dispute with a promotions company. Dallas-based SCA Promotions announced the 2-1 ruling against the former cyclist on Monday when it asked a Texas state court to confirm the arbitration decision. SCA paid Armstrong about $12 million in bonuses during his career when he won 7 Tour de France titles. Those victories were stripped away after Armstrong and his U.S. Postal Service teams were found to have used performance-enhancing drugs. SCA disputed bonuses in arbitration in 2005, and the case produced the foundation of the doping evidence that was used against him. After Armstrong's cheating was exposed, SCA sued to get its money back. Armstrong's attorney, Tim Herman, declined comment. Now that's what I call Lance Armstrong losing his bike shorts. Normally they just say losing your shorts, but in Lance Armstrong's case it's bike shorts.
Why, Mr. Evan, must you explain it?
It's a habit of mine, okay? Right, and on that note, it's time to declare today's lawsuits across America a case dismissed. Because now, it's time to get to entertainment.
Warning, Johnny Gilbert impression in 3, 2, 1.
This is SNL. For Saturday Night Live's 40th anniversary, Will Ferrell returned as Alex Trebek and hosted a hilarious game of Celebrity Jeopardy featuring Sean Connery, Justin Bieber, and Burt Reynolds. The answers, as always, were hysterical. Such as, the adventures of Tom Sawyer are about this person's adventures. I think you know who it is. This G-shaped letter comes between F and H. Duh! And this is the color of snow. What is white? Now, I'm going to have to find an actual link to the Celebrity Jeopardy video, but I am going to post it on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report, because number 1, I'm a game show geek, and I'm just cool like that. And number 2, we have to loosen things up a little bit here at the Evan Miller Report every once in a while. And Lady Gaga is no longer caught in a bad romance. She's engaged to actor Taylor Kinney, according to the Washington Post. The pop star shared the news on her Instagram account Monday. She posted a photo of a ring on her finger and wrote, quote, "He gave me his heart on Valentine's Day, and I said yes." Lady Gaga and Kinney met on the set of her You and I video in 2011. Kinney stars in the NBC series Chicago Fire and had a role in the film Zero Dark 30. My best guess is that Mr. Kinney saw Lady Gaga in that meat dress and thought, that looks tasty. So congratulations on your upcoming chow down, you two. Just don't be like animals, okay? Oh, wait, that's right, never mind. 50 Shades of Grey took number 1 at 81.7 million, despite my pleas to my SHR Weekender crowd not to view that film, but clearly they ignored me. Kingsman: The Secret Service came in at number 2 with 35.6 million, and the SpongeBob movie thankfully rounds out our top 3 with an additional 30.5 million, making back its budget. Just as I expected. Right, that's your entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow, and that is the Evan Miller Report for this Monday, February 16th, 2015. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You'll be glad you did. For all of us here at SHR Media, I'm Corey Evans saying thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll tune in again tomorrow. Good night, everyone.